Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bethany, and on this channel we talk about the false beliefs taught to women inside of the church. So if that's something that resonates with you, go ahead and like this video, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you'll be notified every single time I drop a new video. And come follow me here on Instagram. And be sure to sign up for the Outspoken Exfundie Newsletter in the description box below so you can receive videos 12 to 24 hours early. The last two videos I haven't been doing that great on sending it to y'all first because I was a little behind schedule, so I wanted to get it out there. But after part 2, after today's video, then I'll begin to do that again, where you will receive videos early or before they go public. So today we have part 2 of the Girldefined and birth control, family planning, all of that hoo-ah. So we're gonna dive right into part 2. Here we go. So I'm going to give you a little snippet of where we left off last week so you will not be lost. Here we go.
Hide from them God's wonders and the things that he has done, and how many parents, even without realizing it, are hiding God's glorious deeds from their children just by neglecting to teach them about him and to give time to daily go to the word.
And there's like maybe a second or two that was cut off between part 1 and part 2. So to give you more context, what the lady, I forgot what her name is, Candace, whatever, what she is talking about is parents who are neglecting their children from speaking to them about the Lord. They need to go into the Word, teach them about God, but we have all this social media that's distracting us. That's where part 2 comes into play.
Media and entertainment and sports, and there's so many distractions. We have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to ways to spend our time, and we neglect discipling our kids to the neglect of God's grand plan, which is that there would be a numberless host of people worshiping him at the end of time.
That's so good. We see words in scripture used for children and having babies like a heritage. They're a heritage. They're a gift. They're a blessing. How can we understand what that really is talking about and embrace it? Because if we really did believe that, I think as Christian women, it would change the way we approach family.
Oh, well, I have to say I have a lived reality of experiencing children as a reward. One of the translations says children are a reward from God's hand. I think that when you follow God's design for having babies and having his glory is the ultimate reason that you're doing everything. It's not a vanity project. Kids aren't an accessory. You don't accessorize your life with a cute baby. And when you are submitting yourself to the sanctification that he does in your life through the hard work of being a mom and a dad, and you devote yourself to disciplining your children and discipling them and then delighting in them. Well-disciplined kids are such a delight. And I think we get into trouble. One of the ditches is to be so focused on discipline that we forget about the delight. Our kids are our favorite people in the world to spend time with. We love hanging out with our kids. They're so much fun. And I just think, wow, you are missing out on so much. And so one of the fun things that we like to do is just have young families, and especially young couples, into our home just for a game night or a music night where the kids they have a band and they all play together, and
oh, how fun.
To eat around the table together, to talk, and just to hear, for these young couples to hear that our homeschooled kids are normal, that they can have normal conversations, they're not weird. All of that. It's just doing life in a way that, being a family, being a Christian family in a fallen world, in a dark culture like ours, is such an incarnational way to picture the gospel. A husband.
So I wonder what her opinion on... Okay, so she just said kids are a reward, children are a reward, essentially when you're doing things correctly and when you're doing things right in the eyes of God. So I wonder how she views children who are being adopted, or if they find like a surrogate mother or whatever for homosexual couples who also want children. I wonder if she still views the kid as a reward for the homosexual couple, or if she views the child for them in a different manner. Because for Christians, she's literally laying out the blueprint as a Christian as to how to live a Christ-like life in a marriage. So, you get married to the opposite sex, and in her words, you have babies as soon as you get married because those are your most fertile years. And then you do your occupation and then all those things. So I wonder how she views children, like what her viewpoint is on having a child outside of wedlock, if you're a homosexual couple, whatever. There's so much nuance with that, and that was the first time I ever used that word. I actually just looked it up just to make sure that I was using it correctly, because I was like, there's a word that needs to be described here, and I think it's nuance, because you can't just label children as a reward for a Christian couple, for a Christian whatever. Like, what are all the other kids raised in an atheist home? What are the other kids raised in Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever? Like I said, homosexual home. Like, what are the kids then? Like, are they still a reward even though they're not doing things Christ's way? Like, where kids aren't just in Christian homes. You understand what I'm saying?
Loving his wife and leading her with a servant heart, a wife joyfully submitting to his leadership and trusting God, not fearing what is frightening, as Peter talks about. Children who honor and obey their parents, children who like each other. Just when we go to the grocery store and our kids are just, they aren't doing anything remarkable. They're just not beating each other up and hating on each other. I can't believe how many people notice. And they say, oh my goodness,
Wow.
Your kids, they're so good. And I say, no, they're not. They're, like me. We all stumble in many ways, James says. But thanks be to God, by his grace, we are doing this thing called family in a way that is so against the culture. Wow. And we've made a lot of decisions along the way.
Let me say this thing that just popped into my brain. I think I'm right. The main reason why I was such a good kid, I'd never really had like a rebellious teenage years. I never, honestly did anything behind my mom's back, because I was not just afraid of getting in trouble, but I was terrified of lying and maybe getting in a car accident and dying and going to hell. The fear of sinning, the fear of messing up and dying and going to hell was so prominent in my life, to where I wasn't a rebellious teen. I did exactly what my mom said, because she instilled the fear of God, not the reverent fear, but the fear, like, oh my God, if I do this thing wrong, then I'm gonna be not a good example for God. And if somebody else sees me and does what I'm doing, and then they die and then they go to hell, their blood is on my hands. That's my fault. So having so much on my shoulders at such a young age, I didn't want to mess up. And so, yeah, a lot of Christian kids are obedient and are good because they're taught that obedience is of God, and saying no or arguing or, rebelling or whatever is all sinful, and sin equals not godly, and not godly equals hell. That's why a lot of Christian kids are good when they're younger, and then they might, stay good and stay in the church, or they reach that moment in their life where they're like, wait a second, this is all bullshit. Like, I'm going to go my own way, or they start dabbling, in other things. But I would be very positive to say that the reason why a lot of Christian kids are so good is because they're afraid of messing up. They're afraid of sinning for the sake of their own salvation and other people's salvation too.
Way about how we parent and what we embrace and what we don't. We have a pretty unplugged life and a pretty analog home. You know, we've got our technology here and there, but it's got restraints on it. But it's the relationship with these kids and knowing that my goal was not to raise good kids, but to raise brothers and sisters in Christ.
Wow. That's a huge vision. It changes everything.
Yeah.
I mean, just what you're describing, I'm like, I want that. I mean, I think your next book needs to be all about parenting.
That's what I'm working on.
Oh my goodness, are you really?
Yeah, that's the part 3.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited.
Because get married, start your family, it's like, now what?
Yes.
We got to raise these kids in the fear of the Lord, right?
Are you actually doing this, or are you hoping to one day do it?
No, I've started on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't give up.
This
Don't
is
stop.
good. This is good accountability, Kristen.
Yes.
Keep going.
I need it, and everyone listening needs it and is going to want it. So I'll have you back on, as soon as it comes out. I'll give you a little bit of a deadline.
Yes.
Oh, that's
helpful.
so good. Oh, that vision. So I know right now there are listeners who are wondering, okay, Candace, great. I get this vision. Okay, the gospel, wonderful. But are you saying I just need to have as many children as I can possibly crank out? I mean, is there a biblical balance, or how should we even think about family planning biblically? I know that's a huge question. And I'm still even like, we're on the other side of like, I joke with my husband. I'm like, we've been trying since day one and we're going to keep trying till I hit menopause. I mean,
That's good.
We're not going to give up hope until the door is slammed shut.
Right.
So
That's right.
family planning isn't applicable to us because we're always
Yeah.
trying. But for people
Yeah.
who are like, how do we think about this realistically?
Yeah. Well, a word to people who are worried. Ladies, if you're worried that you're going to have 18 babies, if you say, okay, I'll just trust the Lord, most couples are limited to fewer children than they wanted. Then they are blessed with more children than they thought they could handle.
Why is she taking everything that this woman who is not educated in these things, or even like 0 certifications, like nothing, why is she taking everything to heart? I would ask, where did you get that information? Like, do you have resources? Do you have those statistics? Like, what are the numbers to that? She's like, oh my God, that's so interesting. I'm gonna tell everybody about it. That's so obnoxious.
Oh, wow.
And so statistically, you're not likely to have more than you wanted. You're likely to have fewer. And part of that has to do with later marriage. And there are other factors that play into that. But people that get TV shows because they have 18 babies got TV shows because they were not the norm. That was unusual, right?
That's so true.
Atypical. The Lord has given us a cycle that we can track and understand, and He's given us a mind to figure out when we're fertile. And we can use that to space our babies naturally. I think that there are non-invasive ways to barrier methods and things you can do for occasional, seasonal birth control. We did that at points in our marriage when, the baby was brand new and we got the green light from the doctor. Okay, you're clear to go back to your marital activities. And it's like, but if I get pregnant and she's 6.5 weeks old, what would I do?
Yeah.
So I think there is Christian freedom to use certainly our understanding of our cycles, but even for seasons, I think some forms of birth control, as long as they're not potentially abortifacient. And I am always opposed to chemical birth control because I've just seen the damage it can do to a woman's body. I will say that using birth control changes the act of marriage, the intimacy of sexual intercourse, because you can't help but have some sort of a spiritual barrier. I can't explain it. It's not scientific, but I felt it. And I know that when we decided to start trying and we were suddenly not doing anything to try to prevent pregnancy, there was an openness and a oneness that was so overwhelmingly beautiful to me, and this sense of, maybe we made a baby. That hope, that joy. And Kristen, I will say I am way past menopause because it hit me early at age 39. And it was devastating to have someone tell me I was done. It feels so empowering to say, I'm done. We're done. But when someone tells you you're done and you can't have children, it's a very different feeling. And I am 52 now, and I still sometimes dream about having a baby. And I still sometimes think, oh, I miss that.
A part of me, I'm going to back up Kristen on this. I kind of feel actually really bad for her in this moment. What I want to tell Candace is a big fuck you to her for what she just said. Once you have somebody to tell you that you can't have babies, like you don't understand, like that is heartbreaking. She's been like, she can't. she hasn't been able to have children, and her husband have been trying for a very long time, and she is going through infertility. And for somebody to say, oh, just to have somebody, that wasn't like, I mean, you get it, that sucks. Like, it sucks to not be able to. But is this making sense? Like, that was a little irresponsible and rude. Like, read the room, dude. You've already had children. She had to adopt kids because she can't birth her own at the moment, maybe in the future, but not right now. And you're just kind of like rubbing it in her face, like, well, I've already had kids, but just to have somebody tell me like I can't anymore because I'm older. She's like, well, I'm young and I still can't, so I get it. Oh my God, fuck her.
Our intimacy doesn't even have the possibility of producing new life. There is such a beauty to the way God's designed it.
Wow.
And you can't know it until you...
And let me say to that, is so silly. Not wanting to have a child of your own and to birth it out of your body and to have sex. What did she say? Marital whatever. So dumb. Just say sex. Just say sex. When you're having sex and you are taking all the precautions and you're like, oh, yes, I can have sex and not get pregnant, that is more freeing in my perspective, in my opinion, than having sex to have a child. But at the same time, like, I've never wanted to have sex just to have a kid. And that's not, like, my husband, he has vasectomy. I have to be on birth control. And not just for birth control, because my periods are absolutely awful. When I'm off of it and I'm on my period, I'm passing out. It's just bad. I have very, very bad periods. And birth control has been the only thing that has helped me be a normal human on my period. So I'm not dying. It's terrible. And that's the only reason why I'm on it. So her saying, well, when you're on birth control and then you're having sex with your husband, there's a barrier. No, there's not. There wasn't a barrier when I was on my birth control and having sex before marriage. It was like, oh, great, I'm not going to have a kid. That's wonderful. And it wasn't even, like I said, I'm not even taking birth control for that reason, but preventative, yeah. And her saying, I don't support birth control that could possibly cause the A word, unaliving a child. So many Christians think, the Duggars think, that birth control, the hormonal birth control, like the birth control I take and a lot of other women take, that it causes the A word. And that is literally, absolutely incorrect. That's not how that works. And it's so ignorant of people to think that that's how birth control works. And by the way that she just said that, it makes me believe that's what she thinks.
You experience it.
No, I've never even thought about that, to be honest, until you said it this very minute. I've thought about sex, making babies, of course,
Yes.
But the idea that it's a different kind of sex when it has when the intimacy has the possibility to conceive, and when the conception piece is gone, it changes in some way. Like I've never even thought about that.
And that's not to diminish intimacy
Right.
that can't produce children, as you
Right.
know, and as you've
Yes.
experienced. But just to say that when we take that into our own hands and say, I am going to prevent this, there's a posture there, a heart attitude of being closed off to something. And when you take that away and say, okay, Lord, what did Mary say? Be it unto me according to your will. When you have that kind of this sense of surrender to the Lord that says, I'm open to what you have for us. And when a couple says that together, we're open. Oh, it's just a spiritually rich experience.
Wow. Even if we don't feel like the timing's perfect, or we don't have every last dime and penny organized in our finances, or our family's telling us we're crazy, like just that aspect of trusting the Lord, like willing to say, we're not ultimately in control. God is, and he's our father. He's our provider. He says children are a blessing, this family, this generational, this heritage, raising up disciples for his glory. Like we can trust him with that. This is a good thing. We know confidently by the truth of scripture that we're pursuing a good, beautiful thing and asking God for it. Like, oh, I mean, I just hear like the beauty and the freedom in what you're saying. So I know so many people are going to be inspired. I feel so inspired. I'm like, okay, we're going to double down. So I am curious though, for you guys, were you feeling like y'all were done at 4 kids, or did menopause hit and you were hoping still for more kids?
Well, I felt done at 2 kids, and I even asked Steve if he would have a vasectomy, and he said no. Praise God, he said no. And you know why I said that? Because I had lost all the baby weight, and I was the thinnest I had ever been in my adult life, and I loved how I looked. It was such a bad reason. And so we took off 2 years from trying, and then when we started, we thought, okay, we're ready for a 3rd. I couldn't get pregnant. And we tried for 2 more years, and I couldn't get pregnant. And so we had secondary infertility. And suddenly I was frantic. Now it's this sense of, what have I done? And how do I undo this? And I got to the point of being willing to try some heroic measures or extra measures, or some to just kind of tip my toe down that infertility path.
Yeah.
And in God's kindness and mercy, we conceived, and Churchill was born. So there's a 4-year gap between Zoe and Churchill.
Okay.
Then I hit menopause.
Churchill? Like Winston Churchill? Did I hear that correctly?
I got the phone call, Candace, you have achieved menopause. And I thought,
how did you even
some
know?
Achievement. Well, my cycle was, it was not an achievement. My cycle was so wonky, and I just thought something's weird, and we wanted another baby. And so I went to see a natural hormone specialist.
Okay.
And she did all the blood work. And she said, all your blood work
because you felt
confirms.
like you knew something was off. So you're like, what's going on? Okay.
She said, all your blood work confirms you're in menopause. And I had 2 other doctors also did blood work. They all 3 said, yeah, you can't have any more children. So we came home and we told our kids, we said, guys, we would love to have another baby, but the doctors say mommy can't have more babies. But you know what? We can pray. And we did. Wow. And I started on bioidentical hormones. They're plant-based. They're wonderful. And my cycle came back. And I called that doctor. I said, I think my cycle's back. She said, oh no, that's just breakthrough bleeding. You're done. I got pregnant that month. Well, the next month, obviously.
Goodness.
And so what a testimony to our children. And they still say, Teddy's the miracle. The doctor said we couldn't have more. Mom was done. But God said, no, I am in charge. I opened the womb and I closed the womb. Wow. And I just think now, if we had waited to start having our babies when we thought we were going to be ready, back when we were married and Mary was asking me that question, who knows what our family would look like? Yeah. We have one in heaven. We had a miscarriage between Harrison and Zoe.
Yeah. Who knows what it would look like, but it would still be a beautiful family regardless of when you started to have children. You'd still have kids, and I understand where she's coming from now that she has them. She's like, oh my God, what would I do without them, which is fine. But you also could have pursued all the things that you're gonna try to pursue after the kids get older. Because my mentality also is, what are you thinking about your health? When your kids are getting older, you're creeping up in age too. Cancer goes up. Health issues go up just because of your age. So you also might be held back because of a disease or just your health in general. So why don't you just do all the things that you want to do and let babies come like when they do? And if you're seeking your profession while doing that, like, keep seeking your profession while having your kids. Like, that's not a bad thing at all.
And that was another pregnancy. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't want to be pregnant. I mean, just so many things the Lord teaches you through this painful journey of trying to have children. And I still, on occasion, will think, oh, I wish we'd had more. I wish we hadn't stopped. And, you know, I wish we hadn't taken that 2-year break. And yet, I rest in the comfort that God is sovereign. And He has promised to redeem everything for our good and His glory if we are trusting in Him. And so that has to be the message, to say, whatever your story, the Lord is sovereign, and look to Him to redeem the pain of the past and to guide and direct for the hopeful future, and know that He is faithful.
Amen. Wow, that is so, so beautiful. So in closing, because I know we're out of time here, but I wanted to ask you so much more. This has just been, we are actually having on a doctor for our next episode to talk specifically about birth control and hormonal birth control and the impact that that has on a woman's fertility and her body. So I'm super excited about that conversation. But just as we close here, anything we haven't touched on that you're like, man, I just want to give this final encouragement to young moms, even single women, as they're hearing this conversation?
Wow, that's a big one.
I know.
I have all these notes, and I don't even think I got to any of them.
Well, you can rapid fire give us some nuggets. I'm ready for them.
Oh my goodness. Well, I would just say, stop making these decisions based on worldly wisdom, and search the scriptures and pray with your husband and ask him to commit to praying that the Lord would shape your thoughts about this. Fast and pray if that's what it takes. Seek the counsel of older couples. We never even really talked about how to find mentors in your life, older couples who've done this, who are further down the path, who can walk with you through this, and pray. Ask people to pray with you about having babies. If you desire to have children and you haven't had them yet, it's good to pray about that. It's good to pray with your small group, with your pastor, with your mom, with your sister. The Lord cares more about this than you do, and He is for you. And so go to Him and seek the Lord and seek His wisdom and ask Him, Lord, if I am thinking about this in any way that is contrary to your word and your will, where I have absorbed the world's wisdom, would you clear that out of my mind and help me to think with wisdom about this most important of issues? The window of time is shorter than we think it will be. We have a fertility window that will close. The world and all the infertility clinics want you to think that you can wait till you're 40 and then start trying and be like the movie stars who do it that way. But it is not what it appears. It is prohibitively expensive, and it's biologically very harmful and difficult on your body. Run to the Lord and just ask Him, Lord, grow me and mature me in this area. And then whatever you teach me through it, and if you bless us with children, give me what I'm going to need, because it is a wild ride, but boy, is it sweet and rich and so full of joy.
Yeah. And the sacrifice of motherhood. Can you touch on that really quick? Obviously, if there's a new mom listening with a baby and she's not sleeping at all, up all night, feeling like a zombie, what encouragement do you have for her to just keep the bigger picture in mind?
Yes. Well, the first encouragement won't surprise you. It's get off social media. That sweet middle of the night feeding time is so precious, and it is so fleeting, and it is so tempting. I thank God I did not have a smartphone when I had babies, because they hadn't been invented yet. It is possible.
She seems like, Candace, she seems like the type of Christian who is very, like, toxic positivity. Like, every part of motherhood is sweet and beautiful, and every part of your whole life is just roses, and it might be bittersweet, but oh, it's just beautiful. No, I don't think. I've never birthed a child, but I've been through already some shit with my children, with my bonus kids. And I tell you, it sucks. It sucks. And some of the time it is not fun at all. And it's not it's just bittersweet. No, it sucks. There are moments when it sucks. But there are also moments when it's absolutely beautiful and I love it. And that's the truth. And that is okay to have. Both feelings can be true at one time. You do not have to, well, that feeding time is beautiful. Like, sure, you can have beautiful feeding times, but if you want to watch something funny on TikTok while you're feeding your child, like, that's completely fine. If you are feeling like you're going crazy because you haven't had any sleep in the last, like, however many months because of your baby won't sleep, you try to take care of you first with your, like, I don't want to say first, because obviously once you have your child, like, that child is your number one priority in that moment, but it's like you still have to be a priority. You still have to be a priority, whether that is, doing your business on your phone while you're with your child. I'm not saying all the time. I'm not saying that at all, because yeah, you want to, have that connection with your baby and enjoy those moments. But man, I tell you, there are moments when you're like, oh my God, if I don't look at something, I'm going to fall asleep while feeding this kid. Or I'm afraid that I'm going to fall asleep and the baby is gonna do something. I don't know. So just, it's okay. Like, all of that is okay. She makes it sound like motherhood is all beautiful roses, a garden of freaking butterflies, but I also know of women who hate being pregnant and they've had one kid and they're like, I'm done. I don't like it. Like, I'm thankful for the one that I do have, but if I could take it back, I wouldn't have had that sex with that person. So either way, you can be a mom and love to be a mother, and but you also can be a mom and say, I don't ever want to have another kid ever in my whole entire life. I will kill for my child now, but I don't want to have another one. And that is perfectly okay. Just like me, I've inherited 4 bonus kids and I am a granny. Do I want to have a child of my own? Nope. No, I actually don't. Y'all saw last week we have a puppy. That is enough for me. And that is completely fine too. And I'm not less of a woman because I haven't birthed a child. I am not less of a woman because I don't want a child of my own. I am not less than a woman, period. And neither are you.
To do.
Yes.
I probably would have spent the majority of that time looking at my feeds, and wow, talk about a way to feel bad about yourself, because you're leaking out of every part of your body and nothing fits and you can't sleep and everything hurts. And yet what your baby needs most in that moment is for you to hold and smell the new baby smell and give all your attention and pray and sing over that baby and just soak it in, because it will go so fast. And you will sleep again. I promise. You absolutely will sleep again. But spend that sweet time just with your baby, praying and talking to the Lord and being all in. Mm-hmm. It's bone-wearying work. It does get easier. The young years are so physically challenging. They need help with everything. But the teen years are so mentally and spiritually challenging because they need you to really give your best counsel and friendship and guidance. And so now they don't need you to wipe their nose or button their shoes or their their collar or whatever.
Yes.
But they need you to be available to talk about deep issues and to walk with them. And so I would say, stay engaged all along at every stage. Give your best attention to your kids. the best way to do that is to turn off the distractions. Our kids need our attention, they need us to be fully there in the moment. And we are our kids' favorite plaything. They would so much rather have you, Mom, than to have a toy, and they definitely need you more than a screen. Read them a story, give them yourself. Oh, the fruit is so, so sweet. Kristen, stay in there. Keep homeschooling. Keep teaching those kids, pouring into them. The world, the flesh, and the devil conspires against our kids. Satan is so eager to devour our children. That picture of the dragon in Revelation.
I will tell you this. Oh, God. I was not homeschooled, which really is shocking to me. I think we weren't homeschooled because my mom wanted all of us in music and athletics and all of that, which we were heavily into. But having that mentality, going to a public school, going anywhere that the devil is running around like a prowling lion, getting ready to devour anything. He's the king of lies, you know. He's coming to kill, steal, and destroy, blah, blah, all these things. You always think that, number one, that you are being attacked in some form. It's like spiritually attacked in some way. And then you don't feel safe out in the real world. And it was not until I went to college at a university that really hit me that, oh my God, what I was raised in was not real. This is the real world. Like, people actually talk like this in real, like they are speaking to me this way, like they don't actually believe in God, you know. And especially because I was a music major and I was on the drum line. I was in the percussion studio in the college I went to. And when I was majoring in music, I mean, I was, for a time, I was the only girl, which I was kind of used to because I used to play football and, you know, percussionist in high school and stuff. So I've always done things with more dominant male things. And so that wasn't a big deal, but now I'm in college, so they're talking about drinking, they're talking about sex, they're talking about drugs, they're talking about, you know, they're talking about all these things that I was taught was not okay, was sinful, and to stay far away from. Well, I developed, you know, relationship with these guys because we would travel together, we would play gigs together, we would, you know, all of that. So they became, you know, my really good friends. And then once I actually grew up, I was like, oh shit, I'm so embarrassed because of the things that I would tell them about, like, hey, you're doing this wrong. Or I was that annoying Christian girl, even in college. I even had I had a purity ring in college. And one of the guys on the drum line, he looked and he's like, my nickname is Bets. And that's how I was known on the drum line as well. And he was like, hey, Bets, are you engaged? I was like, no, it's my purity ring. And he was like, your what? And I was like, my purity ring. And he's like, did you say period ring? Do you just wear it? And he is saying this out loud so everybody could hear. And he's like, you just wear it when you're like on your period or something? Does that like tell guys that you can't have sex with them or something? I was like, oh my God, no. Purity. He's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, that I won't have sex till marriage. And those guys mocked me. Like, full on, well, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And I will always remember, a little tangent here, I will always remember one of the guys I was talking to, I was like, yeah, I won't marry a man who's ever had sex before. And he told me, he was like, you know, I understand where you're coming from because I was raised in that same, like, mindset in the same household. He essentially said, you are limiting the amount of good guys that can come in your life if your only, like, stipulation is not having sex before marriage. He was like, there are so many good guys who have had sex before marriage, and that's okay. And he was essentially saying that I'm, you know, limiting the number of men that I could come in contact with or have a relationship or something like that, just because of that dumb stipulation. I was like, well, God has a person just made for me then. And so stupid. That was in college. How embarrassing is that? And now I cuss and the guys are like, oh my God, who are you? Like, this is a whole different person. I'm like, yeah, she's been in there all along, but now she feels free to get out. So, any hoodles, let's carry on.
Waiting to devour, and they need parents who are champions for them, who say, I will not give you over to the world. I am parenting you and claiming you for the kingdom, and I'm going to do everything I can to share the good news of Jesus Christ with you so that you will be my brother, my sister in Christ for eternity. There's no other work we could do that would have that kind of reward. Talk about a reward.
Yes.
Oh, and the fruit is so sweet. It's so worth it.
I needed to hear that, and I think a lot of other women did too.
What I was kind of getting at when I was speaking earlier was that I wish that I would have known real world before going into college. Not because I could have gone to parties and I could have nothing like that, but it was so bewildering to me that not everybody was reading their Bible like outside of class. That it was so incredibly different, and it shook me. I felt like I didn't want to be there anymore, and I just wanted to stay at home because I felt safer at home. And it wasn't because the people around me were bad or anything like that. It was simply because I've never experienced real life before. Because a lot of teenagers, they'll either go to a Christian college or they're going to the ministry or whatever. So there's no part of them going to the real world and seeing just real people stuff. Like, how do you communicate with somebody who doesn't go to church? Like, how do you hold up a conversation when you're used to putting God in all of your conversations? And I think that's, I understand trying to protect your children, but at the same time, that's also potentially setting them up for failure, because at the age I should have already known the things that I learned in college from the guys that I went to school with and the guys that were on the drum line. Like, I learned more from them of real world shit than I did from my parents, and I really wish that I would have learned that so I could have been, more mature going into that. And yeah, I've had more experiences with all of them and I've had more fun without the fear of dying and going to hell.
Actually recently made a little bit of a commitment. I don't know, it just in my heart of, if my boys ask, it's not every single time, but if they say, hey mom, want to go play basketball, or can you do this puzzle with me? Or, my default is like, oh no, I can't, I'm busy, right? Oh, I'm cooking dinner. Oh, I'm doing, and there are times where I can't just drop everything, but there are many times where I could. I'm doing something that isn't urgent. It's not crucially important that I keep doing that thing, or it's completely stupid. Like, it's something that doesn't even matter. And, more often than not, it's like, oh no. And so recently I was like, I want to be investing in it. I want to be. So I was put to the test just recently, like yesterday. My son came to me. He was like, oh, Mom, do you want to go play basketball? And I was in the middle of about to start dinner, but I was like, you know what? That can wait a few minutes. Sure. And I just said, sure. And he was kind of shocked, like, oh, really? Because he just expected, me to say, no, I'm about to start dinner. He was so excited. He ran outside, and our kids are, again, they're older, so they can do all the things.
Right.
I went outside. I play basketball 10, 15 minutes. I love the sport. I grew up playing it. I'm not so good anymore. But he just loved that. And it was just like eye-opening to me. Like, yes, I need to be saying yes more to them because I love them and I want to invest in them.
Yeah. And what we don't want is for them to stop asking, because we've said no so many times.
Exactly.
And, moms of little ones, if you want your kids to talk to you when they're teens and not shut you out, you got to stay engaged. And I am here to tell you, it is not a foregone conclusion that your teenagers are going to rebel and hate you and shut down and push you out of their lives. you just have to stay engaged for the whole journey. And that means giving them your attention. You're right. It means being willing to say, yes, I'll play Catan with you, or yes, I'll we'll go play Foursquare outside, or go shoot basketball, or whatever they love to do, to be available to our kids.
That's so good. Oh, there's so much more, but I will let you go. Thank you for all of your words of wisdom and encouragement. I would love it, though, as we officially close this out, if you would pray for me, for our whole sisterhood listening, coming from all different backgrounds. And
I want to know what this prayer is gonna sound like, so we're gonna keep playing.
Box of life, just pray over us and our hearts as we seek the Lord in this super important area.
I would love to. Lord Jesus, thank you for this conversation and for the way that you knit our hearts together as sisters in Christ. Oh, Father, how we need your help and your wisdom to walk in a manner that is worthy of the gospel. In this culture that does pull on us, and we are tempted in many ways, Lord, help us to look to you for the wisdom we need each day. I pray that you'd set our priorities. I pray that you would be with those listening who long to have a baby, who can't or hasn't been able to yet, or who have a husband who is not on the same page with them. Lord, would you give them patience and help them to trust you and to pour out their heart to you, to cast their cares on you because you care for them. Lord, would you cause many couples to embrace the reward and gift and blessing of children? Would you stir up in our hearts in this generation of believers a renewed vigor and zeal for your design for family? Lord, may we not be just about having more babies to have more babies, but having babies who would grow up to become disciples of Jesus. And Lord, may we embrace the sanctification.
Question now. What if your child doesn't grow up to be a disciple of Jesus? Maybe your child grows up to be, well, kind of like me, who used to believe in all of it, but then started asking questions and used my brain and was like, you know what? Not entirely sure if I believe this anymore. Does that mean that either the parent failed or I failed? The first time that I moved in with a boyfriend, my father had a conniption because he said, this is not the way that me and your mom raised you. And I'm like, well, I understand that, but just because y'all didn't raise me this way doesn't mean that I can't make my own decisions and I can't do the things that I want to do, which that relationship is a whole just in itself. But does that mean that my parents failed? Does it mean that I have failed because I'm not a disciple for Christ anymore, or that they tried to raise me up as being that, but I'm not? What does that mean? I wish that they would have asked that. She would have asked that. What happens if they do stray away? What do we do? What does that actually mean? I'll tell you, it doesn't mean a damn thing about you. It doesn't mean anything about your parents. It just means that you are using critical thinking skills that we were taught not to use.
That comes from parenting the way you've designed us to. It is hard. It is costly. But when we die to ourselves, that's when we find our life in Christ. And when we give, we find that it really is more blessed than to receive. Oh, how much better to pour ourselves out for other people, for the next generation. Lord, help us to be willing to make the sacrifices that will be required and to taste the good fruit that comes from that. Help us to trust you. And I pray that your will would be done, Lord, that anything that we've talked about that is not helpful, that is wrongly discouraging for listeners, Lord, let that just fall away and let what remains be useful and helpful, and may you receive all the glory.
I wonder if she's gonna, it'd be funny if she put, and for those ladies who don't want to have a baby, please, God, give them the want and the need to have a baby. She actually kind of just said that, to have the zeal and the what was the other word that she said? Just the want to have a family that was designed by you, which means to get married and have babies. That's literally what that means. Okay, we're not gonna listen to the rest of that prayer because it's dumb. And there's no inclusivity for people who genuinely don't, like women who genuinely don't want to have a child, and or homosexuals who want to have children, who get to have children through surrogacy or through adoption. Like, they get to have a child, whereas me as a woman, I don't want to have my own kid. What I have right now is perfect, like more than enough. I don't want to have my own kid, and that is okay. And other people who want children, who aren't in the beautiful box like Christ has made, families, Christ-centered family, like, that's okay too, that they want children. Whatever. Like, who cares if the child is being raised in a loving family who won't neglect them and who will properly discipline them. Keyword properly, because kids need discipline, absolutely. But to raise them up, not to be an army for Christ or disciples of Christ. No, to be good freaking humans that love other people regardless of their race, their gender, their background, their religious background, whatever the case may be. To have good humans who love others and who will contribute to society in a positive manner. There you go. Do they have to be an army for Christ? Do they have to be disciples of Jesus? No, they don't have to, because that's not real life. That's not the real world. Oh my God. Any hoodle. So I'm going to leave you with that. That video is done, which means that this video is done. Please let me know your thoughts below. Always remember that you are a fierce and powerful motherfucking woman, and I appreciate you so much. And I will see you next week. Bye.